Hey everyone, welcome to another video on geometry nodes. In this video, we will see about how the geometry nodes are organized or structured in 4.2 LTS version. In earlier days, the geometry nodes were not organized groups or subgroups, but with version 3.6 LTS and above, the geometry nodes have been grouped into subsections. This is what we are going to focus for today. Understanding these substructures is essential so that you know when you use a node, what kind of node is it and why you use that kind of node. I release new videos on a weekly basis. Please subscribe to my channel so that you will be notified when I upload a new one. This is Jay from CJ Academy. Let's begin. I have the Blender opened with custom workspace setup. I will open the geometry nodes structure blend file because I have added some images to this so that I can show side by side. And if you see, there is a workspace with my custom name. I have covered in another separate video how to create these workspaces, custom workspaces, and how to keep them to load by default when you open the Blender. So what I mean by the geometry node structure, let's go to geometry. Okay, so far I have covered input section, constant, all these geometry nodes I have covered, and yeah, group input, group output I have covered a little bit. Attribute nodes I have not covered yet. The next is viewer node. Viewer node we will go further, but before I cover viewer node, because the viewer node is a powerful one, and as you start going through other nodes, it's good to follow it through the viewer node. So I have not covered it yet. So before I go further to the other geometry nodes, I wanted to cover this specific topic called geometry node structure. If you go for a geometry section or a curve section or a mesh or utilities, let's say, which has other subsections, there are further divisions under that, like read, sample, write, operations. So if you go for curve, a similar setup. In mesh, also a similar setup. Even yeah, volume has a little bit of it. Yeah, utilities. Even hair nodes has share some of these similarities. So I wanted to cover this in a meaningful way so that you get it. Let's go to the first one called geometry. So what are the subsections we have here? So you have a read, you have sample, you have write, you have operations. I will cover each of these nodes in detail as and how it fits, maybe in separate videos or group to one and then separated in chapters. I'll see how to do that. But there is something we need to understand before going to each nodes. That is, a geometry has some data to read for you to read it. Okay. And there are some data which you can sample it. Like you can read the data and also pick some of the data to process further. Okay. Sampling is more like from a group of, let's say, 10 set of data you have, you can pick 3 or 4 data from that and then process it further for your requirement. Right. Right is a key part. Like there are some attributes or some property of geometry which you can write. So this is like position you can write, the ID you can write. So I'll come to that ID in a separate video. So if you see read, you can read some data. Sample, you can take some of that read data into the process. If you want, you can write some data to certain allowed properties. But operations is the main place where you do some transformation or convert it to a different thing. All those things you do here. Now, when you go for a specific geometry like search, let's say, for example, I go for shade smooth. Okay, set shade smooth. What is this? This is a mesh main section and it is a write node. Okay, you're going to write something on the shade smooth property. So that's why it is mesh write. This classification has really helped for me to understand the nodes better. The earlier stage it was not like this, so we just have to look for each node and try to understand it. But now the classification or the sub-classification has really helped. So this is on the geometry node. Let's go to curve. Curve is like a subset of geometry. Okay, curve is also a kind of geometry. That means it will have read some data you can read about the curves. There is some sample you can do sampling of the curve information, and if you see there are a lot of data you can write into that properties. And as I mentioned, operations where you convert or transform the curves to different things or delete it or do something with it, that is operations. Primitives, it's self-explanatory. You have some predefined curve geometries which you can use. You don't have to create them from scratch. So that is called primitive. Topology is a very important topic which has to be covered and maintained at the end of geometry creation so that in shading part the shading works well. So the topology plays a very key role in a good shading and compositing output. So topology, we'll see it in a separate video in detail. So instance, it's self-explanatory. Any geometry nodes related to instances will be here. And next is the mesh. Curve and mesh share some similarities. So for that reason, I'll go to here to just show you side by side. So we have seen geometry already. Now I'll go back to curve. Curve I have showed you. It has the same as geometry. That read, write, sample are there. Operations are there. Additionally, primitives and topologies are added. Now if we go to mesh, you can see the difference. I'll just pick. So just one is added. That is read, write, sample is same as the curve. Operations primitive topology is also same as the curve. Additionally, you have UV as a subsection. So if I go to mesh, so you can see there's some nodes for the UV. Volumes, I told volumes has some similarities, like it has operations and primitives, same as the other geometry types. Simulation zone is there, we'll cover it in separate. Materials straightforward, so some nodes for the setup of materials. Textures also same way, some types of textures you can set up. Utility is another main part which has lot of subsections. I cannot go through all of it, but before utilities, I'll show the other ones. So group is group input, group output. Layout is frame reroute. And hair nodes, hair is also a kind of geometry. It has some similarities between the other geometry types. So read is there, write is there. Okay, deformation is nothing but the operations, parallel word for operations. Generations also, guides. So utility, hair has its own utility. So similar to the geometry, it has its own utility section. Coming last to the utilities. So utilities has lot of options. So any node that has field setup in it will most probably coming from the utilities, because after you get some data or some geometry, there will be something you can do with the utilities to get some information out of it, or modify some information, or calculate along the way. So all these things you can do with the utility section. So we will not go through it now, but know that any specific information that you are trying to convert most probably will come from the utility section, and especially the math part is most used. That's it about the geometry node structure. I hope this video gave some insight into how the geometry nodes are structured. If you find this video useful, please like it, share it with your friends. If you want me to cover any specific topic in Blender geometry nodes or any other aspect, please let me know in the comment section. Please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in another cool video. Thank you. Bye.